You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed-sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed-sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy site, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatrists who you can access anytime, anywhere. Talkspace makes getting help convenient. Signing up is easy. You can get paired with a licensed provider typically within 48 hours. You could take your appointments from the comfort and privacy of your home, and you could even talk things out between sessions by sending text messages to your therapist. Also, you with Talkspace can get therapy and medication all in one place, and Talkspace gives high-quality care that's backed by science. Talkspace partners with major research institutions to validate treatment methods, making sure you receive the best care possible from anywhere. Talkspace makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. Most insured members have a $0 copay, and listeners of the Al Galdi podcast can get $80 off their first month of Talkspace. Go to Talkspace.com/podcast and enter the promo code SPACE80. That's SPACE80. Talkspace.com/podcast. Promo code SPACE80 for $80 off your first month of Talkspace. And away we go. Episode 1127 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Wednesday, August 6, 2025. It is the day of the Commanders' joint training camp practice at the New England Patriots. This 2 days before the Commanders game at the Patriots on Friday night at 7:30 in the first game for each team in the NFL's 2025 preseason. Will this joint practice for the Commanders at the Patriots be a clean practice? As you may know, there is a history of fighting for Washington at joint training camp practices. August 2015, a joint practice for the Redskins with the Houston Texans at Skins training camp in Richmond, Virginia. We had fighting. August 2018, a joint practice for the Skins with the Jets at Skins training camp in Richmond. We had fighting. But the Commanders in August 2024 had two joint practices, those at the Jets and Miami Dolphins, and neither practice included any fighting. We on this podcast preach peace, so we are hoping for peace for the Commanders at the Patriots. Hello and welcome to this Wednesday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. Have you seen or heard about the reveal from Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels? Remember his rib injury from last season? It was an injury for which we never got anything specific until now. It turns out that he had a broken rib. Daniels revealed this in a promotional video for the video game Madden NFL 26. This portion of the video was part of a post from the NFL's official X account this past Monday afternoon, and that post now has gotten a lot of attention. Daniels gave the reveal while watching back the Hail Noah, which he threw with a broken rib. As you may recall, the team during that game put a wrapping around his rib area whenever the Commanders were on defense, and yet Daniels in this game, an 18-15 walk-off win over the Chicago Bears at Northwest Stadium this past October 27th, threw for 326 yards and a walk-off Hail Mary 52-yard shotgun touchdown bomb to receiver Noah Brown. Daniels committed no turnovers, and he had 8 carries for 52 yards. An already legendary performance. now even more legendary because it turns out he did all of this with a broken freaking rib. Amazing. Next segment, high-level next frontier insight on the Commanders' 2025 regular season schedule, as I'll speak with C. Jackson Cowart. He is the senior publishing editor for Sportsbook Review, for which he has developed the NFL Fatigue Index, which is a new proprietary formula by Sportsbook Review to measure the effects of wear and tear across the NFL season. And he has the Commanders as having the fifth highest fatigue index for the 2025 regular season. We all know about assessing an NFL team schedule based on opponents, but of course, correctly assessing which teams will be good versus which will be bad in a given NFL season can be tricky, to say nothing of injuries. And so what C. Jackson Cowart has done is examine team schedules based on all kinds of sports science data having to do with the schedule in terms of travel and rest. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. I had never spoken with this guy, C. Jackson Cowart, before. I did not know what to expect. I was impressed. His Commanders breakdown, next segment. Also on the show, we'll talk Nationals and Orioles. Each team on Tuesday evening suffered yet another rough loss in what is a highly disappointing season. The Nats got hammered by the American League West worst Athletics 16-7 at Nationals Park, giving the Nats a 6-game losing streak during which they have been outscored 70-26. And the Nats ace, MacKenzie Gore, another bad start. He officially allowed 8 runs in 3 innings. The O's, they got shut out at the National League East leading Philadelphia Phillies 5-0. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me, the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Feedback on Commanders receiver Terry McLaurin having requested to be traded off his stalled contract extension negotiations with the team. And some of the recent feedback has been connected to the most notable contract saga in franchise history, the contract saga of you-know-who. A saga, a contract dance that I referred to as the cha-cha-cha. Email from David, writes David. Hello, Al. Always enjoy your show. I would start by saying that Terry is my favorite player on the team, but it is still a team, and guys like Peters have an obligation to make sensible decisions. McLaurin has to make decisions that benefit himself and his family. Where I differ from McLaurin is when he acts like the team doesn't value him. I remember a time when a certain quarterback said much the same. While he, who must not be named, is a good QB, he has shown no ability to make the big plays in the toughest moments. I am guessing that Minnesota did not get the return on the investment from him that the Vikings wanted. I also find it somewhat funny that so many fans seem to think that they now know better than the team. Trent did much the same thing, and I feel it's wrong. I felt that Williams saw Washington had let go of the only really viable option and thought that he had the upper hand. The only difference between those two and Terry is the front office and staff. They just won't let McLaurin go without getting substantial value. So everyone, including Terry, should take a breath and let this play out. I don't care if he misses the whole preseason. He's still under contract. When he's on the field, I feel he will always try his best. Unfortunately for him, the team has the upper hand. I don't blame the team for not wanting to raise the bar more just because Pittsburgh overpaid someone. Keep up the great work, and I will keep listening. Thank you for the email, David. The Commanders in this Terry McLaurin situation do very much have the leverage. They do have the upper hand. Email from Fear No Blade, writes Fear No Blade. The Terry McLaurin situation reeks of you-know-who. When a player demands every dollar, the player often overestimates his value versus what it takes to win the Super Bowl. It takes a smart GM who can put together a team and work with the pieces to stay together. You can't pay everyone every dollar. The goal is to win the Super Bowl. That is the determinant for a player's value now and when his career is over. The current situation has the potential to win multiple Super Bowls and be part of a dynasty. What team can Terry go to that has that potential? If all you want is every dollar, follow the trail of missed opportunities of you-know-who. Thank you for the email, Fear No Blade. First of all, I love that both David and Fear No Blade referred to you-know-who as you-know-who, or at least by not saying his name. We on this show, with rare exception, do not say his name, because the mere mention of his name triggers people in all kinds of ways. But there are multiple key differences between the you-know-who and Terry McLaurin contract situations. One, of course, is the state of the team, infinitely better now as compared to when you-know-who was here. Another key difference is that Quarterbacks age differently than receivers. There was zero worry about you-know-who's age when the debate over whether the Redskins should pay him big money was raging, because as we all know, quarterbacks can play very well deep into their 30s and can even play well in their 40s. The receiver aging curve is a lot different and a lot harsher. And another difference is that quarterback matters more than receiver. It's extremely difficult to have sustained success in the NFL without an upper half of the league quarterback, but an NFL team not having a top 10, top 15 receiver in no way precludes that team from having sustained success. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens all have had underwhelming receiving cores in recent seasons, and yet all have had great success. While we're talking about the Terry McLaurin situation, I wanted to comment on a few items from NFL insider Diana Rossini of The Athletic on her Scoop City YouTube show that she does with former NFL quarterback Chase Daniel, whose many NFL teams included the Redskins. The latest installment of the show came out on Monday, and Rossini on that installment had this on McLaurin.
Here's where things stand now. From what I can gather, nothing has changed significantly yet. Okay, so I know there's some talk out there that McLaurin is looking for that identical contract of DK Metcalf.
That's what I heard.
I heard there's parts of that contract that he's looking for, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the exact APY, right? Gotcha. Because the thing that's holding Washington back from jumping in, despite the fact that they love Terry. I mean, Dan Quinn has been phenomenal in speaking about his player of like, we love you, like we got to do this. And even Terry's been great he even gave the organization a heads up and personally told Dan Quinn
you don't see that
he was
going to
ask for a trade, right? Like,
you
do you think Micah like called no, and I mean, this isn't like comparing one to the other, but it's just, this is the type of guy Terry is. And I think they're at a point right now where Washington's saying, for us, you're turning 30 years old on September 15th, right? That's in just a few months here, to give you a contract that is relative to the receivers that we're seeing get paid who are younger just doesn't make sense. Whereas obviously we know the Terry side of this is, you have had success because of me. I am the best weapon for Terry. And there's a little bit of a tax, I think, that the McLaurin camp wants paid of what Terry's done before Jaden arrived.
All right, so a few things there. Diana Rossini made the point that what Terry McLaurin is asking for isn't necessarily the same APY, average per year, that Pittsburgh Steelers receiver DK Metcalf has, $33 million. She said that she has heard that McLaurin wants, quote, parts of that contract, end quote. And what I'm guessing those parts include is the guaranteed money. Guaranteed money matters more than APY or AAV, average annual value. The DK Metcalf contract has $60 million fully guaranteed at signing. I'd bet that is a big part of these talks between the Commanders and McLaurin, him wanting at least $60 million fully guaranteed at signing. The other item from Diana Rossini that stood out to me was this notion of a, quote, tax, end quote, that McLaurin believes that the team should pay for what he is as a teammate and leader, and how he, during the dark times for the team in recent years, was a bright light, a positive influence, a very good representative for the team. Look, I get McLaurin feeling this way, but I also get Adam Peters feeling like it's not his regime's responsibility to compensate McLaurin for that stuff. If you're Adam Peters, that stuff, while laudable, was about an environment with the team before you became its general manager, and isn't a thing moving forward. And by the way, isn't a thing moving forward because of Peters, because of the culture that he and managing partner Josh Harris and head coach Dan Quinn are presiding over. A team in sports should pay big money to players for what they will do, not for what they have done. It's bad business to pay big money to players for what they have done. McLaurin already has been compensated for what he has done. But yeah, all of this is part of the complexity of this Terry McLaurin contract situation. This is not a simple situation. Up next level insight on the Commanders' 2025 regular season schedule, as I'll chat with Jackson Cowart, senior publishing editor for Sportsbook Review, on his groundbreaking analysis.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, and maybe even a whole new life. So why not start the journey today? There's over a dozen languages available to learn at your own pace so you can achieve your goals with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm finally learning French after taking classes in high school and thrilled to finish what I'd started years ago. And my favorite part about Babbel is that it's dialogue-based. It helps me to actually practice conversations, and the speech recognition ensures I'm saying words correct them all. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/bluewire. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/bluewire, spelled BABBEL.com/bluewire. babbel.com/bluewire. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
If you are listening to this podcast via Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can rate the podcast with a star rating. 5-star ratings are greatly appreciated. They help us out a lot. Thank you for doing them. The Commanders on Tuesday traveled to New England for their joint practice at the Patriots on Wednesday and preseason game at the Patriots on Friday night. And with the Commanders traveling for the first time since the end of the 2024 season, we now are going to go in-depth on the Commanders' travel and much more regarding their 2025 regular season schedule. I am pleased to welcome to the Al Galdi podcast Jackson Cowart. He is the senior publishing editor for Sportsbook Review. He has written a really interesting sportsbookreview.com piece, headline quote, 2025 NFL Fatigue Index, ranking all 32 teams by travel, rest, and schedule quirks, end quote. The NFL Fatigue Index is a new proprietary formula by Sportsbook Review to measure the effects of wear and tear across the NFL season. C. Jackson ranked all 32 teams by projected season fatigue. He has the Commanders as having the fifth highest fatigue index for the 2025 regular season. You could follow C. Jackson Cowart on X at C. Jackson Cowart, and Cowart is spelled Cowart. Hey, C. Jackson, how are you?
I'm doing good. Resting up while we can, right? The Commanders probably should do the same.
Yes, sir. You don't want your fatigue index to be high. So this is a fascinating thing that you've done. We, of course, have had plenty of analysis of NFL team schedules over the years, but you've taken the analysis to a new level. As you write about the NFL fatigue index, it is, quote, a first-of-its-kind metric that measures the cumulative effects of fatigue across the entire NFL season, backed by scientific research and schedule data for every team. Our model calculates a weekly fatigue score for every team based on travel distance, rest days, time zone changes, circadian misalignment, altitude, and progressive wear and tear before adding it up across all 18 weeks to determine which teams face the most grueling schedules in 2025. End quote. A lot there. Tell us about your process. What was your methodology for the fatigue index?
Yeah, so we were doing a lot of brainstorming for different story ideas, different ways to look ahead to the NFL season, especially coming up to the NFL schedule release and really all of the pomp and circumstance that went into this year's in particular, right? And we were looking at all of the things that were coming out and the analysis that had been done. And, you know, there's an article that comes out every year ranking, the travel miles that all of these teams have to go through during the year. And that makes sense. And that does give a sense of the picture of what these teams are going to face. But, as we were talking back and forth behind the scenes, we were realizing, well, there isn't really any way to measure the things that go into fatiguing a team beyond travel, right? And there's so many different things that we know. There's analysis of which teams have the biggest rest advantage and disadvantage. Shout out to Warren Sharp and all the work that he's done over the years on that. Really done a great job in that space. And then, like I mentioned, the travel miles, but nobody had really tried to put those together. So, what I tried to do is understand scientifically what is it that generates fatigue, right? And it's these things that we've mentioned. It's travel miles. It's, rest days, lack of rest days. It's being away from home. There's a lot of studies that suggest that teams in all sports really, but particularly football, kind of the weekly nature of it, the more consecutive games that you don't have that opportunity to have your regular routine, that's going to mess with your ability to rest and recover. Just the time of day that you play the game. There's a lot of really interesting science out there that suggests even though these teams are traditionally playing at 1:00 local time, that's not the best time for their body to play. If it was a perfect world, they'd probably kick off at like 3:15. Like that would be ideal for their body. So there's so much research out there there was a study that I looked into. I want to say it was looking at maybe 20 to 30 years of data that suggested that West Coast teams playing night games against East Coast teams covered the spread 66% of the time, which is astronomical. I mean, that seems, obviously, if it was just as simple as that, we'd all go bet the West Coast team every Monday night. So what I tried to do is just take all of these different factors and figure out a way to actually quantify it. And that was what a lot of the work was going into this, is trying to use linear weights, the concept of linear weights, something that Tom Tango popularized a lot with baseball and building different baseball statistics, which is essentially just a fancy way of saying take a factor, give it a number, and then you can put them all together to make one catch-all metric. So that's what we did. And unfortunately, it does not look good for DC in that respect, just with, the article talks about this, but the Commanders have one of the worst rest differentials of any team. They travel more miles than most teams. They have, let me pull this up here. So they have the third worst net rest differential, which is to say they have 13 fewer days of rest than their opponents do. Only two teams have that worse. They play the most games on short rest. They have 5. Nobody else has, the Eagles have 5 as well. So they'll share in that misery, but just a lot of different things going against them, particularly on the rest factor. And I think, the idea of this fatigue index, this is the first year we're putting this together. So we'll kind of see if that does, bear out, if we can rank at the end of the year, look at these teams based on fatigue and see if that kind of reflects whether they over or underperform. My sense is that it will. That's kind of the idea that we had going into this. I'm relatively high on the Commanders. I think most people are, based on what they've done in the offseason and how they looked on the field last year. But I do think if the Commanders underwhelm this year, I think fatigue is going to be a huge reason why.
When it comes to the many factors that go into the fatigue index, travel distance, rest days, time zone changes, circadian misalignment, altitude, progressive wear and tear, are some of those factors worth more than others, or did all of those factors get equally weighted?
Yeah, so they all have their own individual weight. What I tried to do, I am not a scientist and I don't play one on TV, but I did try to do as much research as I could about what scientists said led to cumulative wear, cumulative fatigue. So I linked a lot of these studies in the article. If you check it out, like you mentioned on sportsbookreview.com, a lot of these you can click through and see the research that's been done in football, some in other sports, just trying to look at how much does factor X wear on a team. So for example, one of the biggest elements that can wear on a team is travel. Like we've mentioned, everybody knows that. I think the casual fan understands that a 3,000-mile road trip is maybe going to have an impact on that team. But how do we compare that to a 500-mile road trip? How do we compare it to a 2,000-mile road trip? So, I looked at a study that suggested that for every 100 miles that a team travels for a road trip, I believe this was basketball study, but to me, I found it interesting enough to, reflect into football, that team's win percentage was impacted by like 1.3%, so to speak, right? There's so many factors, and the study doesn't pretend to say that is the only, factor for win percentage, but it was something that they isolated with really stringent, scientific study factors. So I found that interesting. And so I used that 1.3% as a measure to as a factor to measure that team's load for that week. So that's one. Altitude change is another one. They looked at for every 1,000 feet in the air that you travel for a game, your ability to recover, your oxygen rate is impacted by 20 to 25%. So there's really only one place, right, that's going to impact in the NFL, and that's Denver. But if you're going to Denver, you're going to face the effects of that, and we know that over time. So altitude change impacts teams less than travel. Circadian misalignment impacts teams probably in between the middle of those two, roughly speaking. But yeah, they all impact them in different ways. And so I tried to use the results of these studies. Fortunately, scientific studies are very quantitative by nature. So just tried to look at the numbers that they had out there and think in my head and do a lot of testing, a lot of data testing, and trying to make sure these things made sense with each other, of getting the right weights between the two. And the process that I tried to follow, I wanted them to be results agnostic. So I didn't want to try to fit the numbers that I was using to make the results look nice, right? I think that's the wrong way to do it. I tried to fit these factors together to make sense with each other based on what the science said. And I think what I loved is once I was done with it and ranked all of them at the very end, a lot of West Coast teams traveling east, struggled in the fatigue index. A lot of East Coast teams playing at night against a West Coast team struggled relative to fatigue. Teams coming off of the London trip had a lot more cumulative fatigue than other teams that did not have to experience that. So I think the results bared out what the science says. That was obviously the point. But yeah, each one of these are weighted specifically based on what science has said, what we can measure. The science has said what these factors have on these teams. And a team like Washington that has so many games on short rest, doesn't have the opportunity to recover from the game they just played, has to travel exorbitant, miles after not having the ability to recover. All of that adds up. And I think especially near the end of the year, we could see that with a team like the Commanders.
Washington is in territory the likes of which the team has not been in years. The Commanders' 2025 regular season schedule features 8 standalone games, including 5 primetime games. The 8 standalone games are the most for the team in a regular season in franchise history. The 5 primetime games are the most for the team in a regular season since 2017 and are tied for the most in a regular season in franchise history. The team has all of these standalone games, of course, because it is expected to be very good, in large part because of quarterback Jaden Daniels. And that, of course, is a very good thing. But this schedule could work against the team being very good. The Commanders have the 5th highest fatigue index for the 2025 regular season. You wrote, quote, "The Commanders drew the short end of the schedule stick with a bottom 3 net rest differential, the most games on short rest, and the 4th most games against a more rested opponent, including 4 coming off a bye week," end quote. There's great irony here. The team, being expected to be very good, has landed at this schedule that could very much work against the team being very good.
Yeah, the Chiefs are kind of the archetypal example of that, right? They have 7 games this year in prime time. We've never seen a team play that many games. A lot of the Chiefs' schedule is actually pretty favorable, but the fact that they play in so many primetime games means they play on short rest so many times. And so they have a very unfavorable schedule in that respect. And so I think pulling it up here, I'm trying to remember where they are, but I think they're in, let me search here. They're 13th. So they're right in the middle of the pack, even though, they have a decent middle of the road rest differential. They don't play that many games that have a quote high fatigue. So I measured, a game with a fatigue of 10 plus. Chiefs don't have that many, but they're middle of the road because they have to play so many of these short rest games. So the Commanders, the Eagles, obviously the defending champions. I know that's maybe not what you want to hear on this pod, but the Eagles are facing the same issue as the Commanders, where they have so many games at short rest because the NFL schedule makers want to see the Eagles. They want to see the Commanders. I think we see that a lot with the schedule. One of the things that in doing this project I actually have a lot more respect and appreciation for the job the NFL schedule makers have to do. Nobody really breaks things down on this level from a media perspective, but I have to think that the NFL is looking at a lot of these factors that I do, because you'll notice when you check out the piece that a lot of the teams that have the greatest advantages in one area have some of the greatest disadvantages in another, which was really compelling to me, and I think has to be intentional. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for every team, and the Commanders are one of those teams that they kind of rank below average in terms of what you would want across the board for the exact reason you mentioned. They're trying to get them on TV, they're trying to get them in spots where people can see them, and the result is they have a lot of very unfavorable spots. When you look at, I have kind of an internal metric that I'll use during the season to write a weekly article looking at which teams have the biggest fatigue advantages and disadvantages for that week, based on, the load of the week and the cumulative load. The Commanders have some of the worst spots, individual weak spots of any team in the entire season. They have 2 of the 10 worst home spots in terms of weekly net fatigue. So that's week 6 against the Bears, week 9 against the Seahawks. They're home. They should have the advantage in fatigue, and they actually have a disadvantage against both those teams. They have 5 of the, they have the 5th worst spot by cumulative net fatigue. So that's me looking at up to that point, what is team A versus team B? What's the fatigue that they have accrued? Week 10 against the Lions have a really nice schedule this year when it comes to fatigue, and the Commanders obviously do not. So that is the 5th biggest misalignment of the year, and it's because the Commanders keep playing on primetime, and the Lions are spared a little bit in that regard. So things like this add up. I do think the NFL schedule makers are trying to keep it in mind when they do put these teams on primetime, but sometimes there's only so much you can do.
Much more with C. Jackson Cowart in moments. Are you looking to upgrade the heart of your home? Whether it's time to repair your gas fireplace, modernize your hearth, or simply add more comfort and style, Nova Fireplace and Stove is Northern Virginia's go-to expert for heat, safety, and home transformation. Nova Fireplace and Stove is a family-owned, fully licensed, and insured company with over-the-top credentials, gas and electrical master's licenses, a Class A contractor's license, and a long list of 5-star reviews to back all of this up. Nova Fireplace and Stove has a beautiful showroom in Woodbridge, Virginia. That's where your dream fireplace begins. Come in and see Nova Fireplace and Stove's stunning displays, including custom fireplace glass doors and stone refacing options that can completely transform the look of your fireplace. From sleek and modern to rustic and cozy, Nova Fireplace and Stove has something for every style. And here's what else Nova Fireplace and Stove offers: gas fireplace service and repair, chimney cleaning and brickwork repair, generator installation, panel replacement, and water heater repairs, smoke detectors, security lights, and more. Every job includes a free in-home estimate. And for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast, Nova Fireplace and Stove is offering $25 off any service. Just mention this ad. Nova Fireplace and Stove only works in Northern Virginia and thus knows the homes, the codes, and the people. Your satisfaction is 100% guaranteed because Nova Fireplace and Stove takes pride in every flame that is lit and in every customer who is served. So stop by the showroom, see what's possible, and let Nova Fireplace and Stove help you bring warmth, safety, and style to your space. You can also visit NovaFireplaceandStove.com. Nova Fireplace and Stove, where comfort meets craftsmanship, and your fireplace becomes the heart of your home. We're talking with C. Jackson Cowart. He is the senior publishing editor for Sportsbook Review. He has ranked the Commanders as having the 5th highest fatigue index in the NFL for the 2025 regular season. The Commanders in their Renaissance 2024 season were really healthy. They, for the 2024 regular season, were number 5 in the NFL in fewest adjusted games lost per Aaron shots. Is it your suspicion that the team having this high fatigue index for this coming regular season will lead to more injury?
No, 100%. That's to me, that's one of the best ways to use this tool that we've provided. And that's really what this is. I mean, it's fun to look at all of the numbers and the metrics. It's fun to add the narratives on what we can do. But I view this fatigue index as a tool, right? A free tool, mind you, for any of you that want to go out and check it out and use this in, your projections, or any of you that are into betting. That's a lot of what we do. I see this as a tool to make your own conclusions and assumptions about what this means. And one of the assumptions that I have is that the teams at the top of this fatigue index are going to face a lot more injury concerns. You have the Rams, number one, the Chargers, number two, West Coast teams. They have to travel across the world, literally. They travel. I think their total one-way travel for games would circumnavigate the globe, or maybe it's two-way travel. But I think we're going to see a lot of injuries with those teams. I think we're going to see the Niners, a similar situation. I mean, West Coast teams are always put in a bad spot because of how much they have to travel. But I mean, it's impossible. Maybe not impossible, but pretty difficult for someone like you and me to just project injuries without knowing all the data that these teams do. But this is, I think, as good as we can get to having the data that would indicate something like injury risk. And unfortunately for Washington, I don't think they're going to have the same luck as they did last year. I think it would be foolish maybe to suggest that we could predict an individual player's injury. I don't think anybody should not be buying Jaden Daniels stock because the Commanders have a tough schedule, right? The Commanders, obviously, as a franchise, they know what they're doing and they're invested in their largest investments. So, I don't think they're going to try to put him in harm's way, but as far as quarterbacks go, he's going to have less time to rest, and he's going to have, more miles to travel and all of that than some other quarterbacks. So I do think that it's something that they're going to have to manage. I think we're going to see this, my suspicion at least, is we're going to see this with some of these teams that are high up on the list at the end of the year, and particularly the playoffs is something that I'm interested in. I think both of us would assume that the Commanders are well positioned to go to the playoffs. That would be my projection for them. But if and when they do make it, we're going to have to see how well that the coaching staff has prepared the team for the rigors of this season, because it is a rigorous season. And I think, January, February is when we see the effects of that the most.
You've mentioned that you are high on the Commanders for this coming season, even with the high fatigue index. What's your overall outlook for the team?
I mean, I like a lot of the additions that they made, as most people do. I think it was kind of funny last year, following them week to week, not as a Commanders fan or in the Commanders sphere, but looking more, I write about the NFL in a general sense. Everybody kept waiting for the other shoe to drop and waiting for them to be fraudulent, right? And that never happened because they're not. So the expectations are incredibly high this year. They have one of the shortest Super Bowl odds, especially of, there's 5 teams that kind of own the ranks there: Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens, Bills, and Lions. And then it's kind of everybody else. But the Commanders are really the best of the rest of the everybody else. So I'm probably as high as the market is. I don't know if I would go higher than that, because I think we're not buying a year ahead, because that would have been last year. But I do think that if anything goes wrong, I don't think that that's maybe priced into the market. This is one of those things with the Commanders, this whole fatigue index, that I think could go wrong. So I would maybe be a little bit more pessimistic than the market on them because of exactly what we're talking about here. But they have all of the pieces to withstand that, right? I mean, last year, it kind of felt like they were winning games on a metaphorical shoestring budget, probably literally. So if you looked at cap spent out, because they had one star that was really leading a brigade of guys that nobody was expecting anything from. That's not the case this year. They have the horses that they need. It's obviously going to be tough to beat Philly. I think that it would maybe be foolish for us to not price in some post-Super Bowl hangover. We see it essentially every year, right? Chiefs are the only team that's been able to kind of hold that off, and even they looked a little shaky in their second year after winning it all. So I think that the division is winnable, but I would probably just have them going in as a wild card. I imagine, I don't know if their win total is right now. You might have a better sense than me, but 10, 11 wins seems very reasonable to me going in as a wild card team. But I would be super skeptical about that first game just because of everything we're talking about here. There's so many factors that go into winning a football game. It is not just fatigue. And that's one thing too, a takeaway from this. I wouldn't go out and look at this fatigue index and then bet against all the teams on the top half and bet on the ones at the bottom. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but it is one of my goals here was to find what is the market not pricing in. What are things that are not being factored in appropriately? And I think this is one of them. I think it's a market inefficiency that isn't being priced in. So if you're out there buying Commander stock, I would just be a little bit cautious, recognizing that maybe the stock that you're buying, whether it's literally or metaphorically, probably is not pricing in the difficulty of what they have ahead. But honestly, they have, like I said, they have the horses to make it work. So I wouldn't be betting against them, but I would maybe be a little bit more tepid in my endorsement of them, just given what they have ahead.
Final question, and this isn't Commander specific, but it does apply to them. NFL home field advantage does not mean what it used to mean. The advantage is lessened, and the betting markets now reflect that. Why is it that NFL home field advantage has gone down?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, the best explanation I would imagine, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure that odds makers know the answer because it took them a bit to catch up to that as well. I think we're just smarter these days, right? I think teams know how to prepare for it better. As an example, this is quite literally not home field advantage to me. This isn't the best example, but you look at the Vikings, they have this crazy stretch where they're doing 2 overseas games in a row, right? It's the first time we've ever seen that. They're playing week 4 and week 5, both in Dublin, and then I think the next one is in London. We've never seen that. The Vikings, instead of traveling out there and then traveling back and traveling there, they have smart people that work their organization. They realize they should just stay overseas. They have a whole regiment planned out for how they're going to adjust to the circadian rhythm stuff that I talk about in this article. I just think we're smarter these days. As that is an example, the Vikings know organizationally how to handle this really difficult load that they have ahead. I think, we see these West Coast teams traveling east, maybe adjusting their travel schedule, maybe going a day earlier than they would need to, knowing that they need to prepare their body for jet lag, prepare their body for all of the rigors in that respect. So I think we're just smarter. I think organizations are better equipped to handle the difficulties of traveling on the road. I think one of the biggest misunderstandings of home field advantage is that 3 points is kind of traditionally what was always given in the betting market for a team that was at home. And then that's kind of gone down to 2.5. And, that might trend down to 2 as we get, in the next few years. I think that it's a misunderstanding is that those 3 points are just because the crowd is cheering really loudly, right? Like that's not why the home team gets 3 points. It's all of these reasons that we've talked about here. It's because the road team has to get on a flight and, deal with jet lag, and they don't get to sleep in their own bed the night before. So those very factors that have made it so difficult to travel on the road in the past, I think are less difficult than they have been because teams know how to kind of deal with that. They know how to create situations that are maybe more more not familiar with what they would do at home, but at least approximating that. So I think teams are just better equipped to deal with the greatest adversities that we have, but you still can't get rid of jet lag. You still can't overwrite fully the circadian misalignments that teams might have, facing an opponent in a different time zone than what they would normally be accustomed to. So these things are still always going to be a factor that you have to work against. Teams are getting better at working against it, but still one of the biggest adversities that teams face. And when you face it too much, it is going to add up.
C. Jackson Cowart, Senior Publishing Editor for Sportsbook Review. Thanks a lot. All the best.
Yeah, thank you. It's great catching up.
All right, good stuff from C. Jackson Cowart. The NFL, as we know, is wildly unpredictable. And so what we think about a team's schedule now can be a lot different than what the schedule ends up being. But advanced statistical analysis of the Commanders' 2025 regular season schedule consistently is saying that it is hard, certainly harder than the team's schedule for the 2024 regular season. Take a listen to this from Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis on last Thursday's show, episode 1123 of this podcast, on the Commanders' 2024 regular season schedule versus their 2025 regular season schedule.
Let's just keep in mind that the Commanders played a down team in the Dallas Cowboys, a down team in the New York Giants, the NFC South, the AFC South, which had featured the Tennessee Titans as their opponent, which gave them the number 1 overall pick, a very bad Chicago Bears team that ended up firing their coaching staff, and an Arizona Cardinals team that still is trying to figure things out. Collectively, that ranked as the number 29 toughest schedule of opposing defenses that Jaden Daniels went up against. So that's the 4th easiest. This year, my current projections show that they will play the number 2 most difficult schedule of opposing defenses, moving from 29th to number 2. That is the biggest jump. Obviously, it sounds big. It's the biggest jump for any offense in the NFL for a strength of schedule of opposing defenses. So it's incumbent upon Jaden Daniels to have that sophomore jump, for Cliff Kingsbury to continue to stay creative offensively and not get too predictable at any point in time, because it is going to be a gauntlet this year from a scheduling perspective.
All right. The Nace Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. It knows all about winning. Just recently, an $8 million jury verdict in Baltimore City Circuit Court in a case in which the Nace Law Group represented the family of a 42-year-old man who died after a simple procedure. Lead attorney Chris Nace, he is a big Commanders fan. He is a big supporter of this podcast, and his firm wins trials. If you have a case, contact the Nace Law Group. Call 202-902-7611 or visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and tell the Nace Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. The Nace Law Group is tremendous. It is a Washington, D.C.-based family law firm that handles medical malpractice, personal injury, birth injury, legal malpractice, and consumer protection cases, offering aggressive advocacy for victims in Washington, D.C. and West Virginia. Lead attorney Chris Nace is an experienced trial attorney who is not afraid to take cases to trials, and that's because the Nace Law Group wins trials. If you feel that you've been wronged, if you think that you've been wronged but aren't sure, contact the Nace Law Group and schedule a no-obligation appointment. Call 202-902-7611 or visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and tell the Nace Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. That's 202-902-7611 or Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and tell the Nace Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. The Nace Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. Well, at last, Cade Cavalli is making his second Major League regular season start. The Nationals are promoting him from Triple-A Rochester to start their game against the Athletics at Nationals Park on Wednesday evening at 6:45. The Nats took Cavalli out of the University of Oklahoma with the number 22 overall pick in the 2020 MLB draft, but he, due to injury and ineffectiveness, has made just one Major League regular season start, which was all the way back on August 26, 2022. In March 2023, underwent Tommy John surgery on his right elbow. He is not having a good season for Triple-A Rochester. 15 starts, 65 innings, ERA of 6.09, whip of 1.55, though he does have a strikeouts per 9 innings of 9.97. In the meantime, what has happened to the Nats ace MacKenzie Gore? He on Tuesday evening got ripped by the Athletics. This in a 16-7 Nats loss to the A's at Nationals Park in Game 1 of a 3-game series. The Nats now are in the midst of a 6-game losing streak during which they've been outscored 70-26. The Nats in MLB's 2025 regular season have reached a new low point, 24 games below 500, 44-68. Second worst record in the National League, and the run differential now is minus 143. Second worst run differential in the NL. The A's, they in this regular season now are 50-65. Worst record in the American League West, second worst record in the American League, and yet the A's on Tuesday evening pummeled the Nats. This was a humiliating loss for the Nats. And yeah, MacKenzie Gore was a mess. He officially allowed 8 runs in 3 innings. He gave up a whopping 12 hits, which were 2 home runs, 3 doubles, and 7 singles. He issued a walk. He recorded no strikeouts. He threw 60 pitches, 38 strikes versus 22 balls. 4th consecutive start at which Gore was off to some degree. The 8-1 loss to the San Diego Padres at Nationals Park on July 20th. Gore allowed 8 runs in 2 1/3 innings. The 1-0 loss at the Minnesota Twins on July 25th. Gore allowed 1 run in 5 innings, but he issued a whopping 6 walks and 2 wild pitches. The 9-1 loss at the Houston Astros on July 30th. Gore allowed 6 runs in 5 1/3 innings. He's since pitching in the All-Star game, in which he pitched well. A perfect top of the 5th on 9 pitches. Has not pitched well. And Gore now for this regular season has an ERA well above 4. 23 starts, ERA of 4.29, whip of 1.37. His season is unraveling. The strikeouts have dried up, and he's given up a ton of runs. So here was Nats interim manager Miguel Cairo during his postgame press conference on Tuesday night on MacKenzie Gore, and then you'll hear multiple follow-up exchanges.
You know, he threw strikes. They were just right in the middle of the plate. And, you know that when you throw it right in the middle of the plate, they're going to, in the big leagues, they're going to swing. They're going to that thing got some power too. So, it happens. At least he was throwing stride and he was attacking the strike zone. They just make good contact.
Because he's had similar results in the second half, like last year and this year, in terms of things falling off in the second half. Where do you just see from him, and how does he get back on track again?
I'm gonna tell you, he's gonna be fine. He's just one star away from being good. He's throwing stride. Now he just gotta mix it up, better. But he's gonna be fine. He knows how to pitch, and he's gonna be just fine.
How did you assess his composure as everything was kind of spiraling tonight?
I'm gonna tell you, they were aggressive right away on him. He was throwing strikes. He left some pitches in the middle of the plate, and they put good contact. But I'm gonna tell you, he's a ace. He's a number one. I believe in him, and every time that he pitch, I know we got a chance to win.
It is painful seeing the Nats be this bad right now. It is especially painful seeing foundational players like MacKenzie Gore and James Wood struggle right now. Wood on Tuesday evening as the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter 0 for 3 with a hit by pitch. The Nats, for this 16-7 loss to the A's on Tuesday evening, had a new-look bullpen, but the bullpen still was bad. 5 Nats relievers officially combined to allow 8 runs in 6 innings. Clayton Beeter officially allowed 1 run in 1 inning, but he in the top of the 4th faced 6 batters and got just 3 outs, all of which were strikeouts. But Beeter, to the first batter he faced, gave up a 2-run homer by J.J. Bleday to center field for a 9-0 A's lead. The homer went a projected 418 feet per Statcast, and Beeter issued back-to-back 1-out walks. The Nats on Tuesday afternoon announced having recalled Beeter from Triple-A Rochester. The Nats on July 26th announced having traded utility man Ahmed Rosario to the New York Yankees for 2 prospects in Beeter and outfielder Braum Martinez. Beeter, at the time of the trade, was the Yankees' number 20 overall prospect per MLB Pipeline. Orlando Revolta, he allowed 1 run in 1 inning. He in the top of the 5th gave up a leadoff full-count homer by Shea Langoliers to left field for a 10-1 A's lead. P.J. Poulin, he tossed a scoreless top of the 6th despite giving up back-to-back 2-out singles. The Nats on August 3rd announced having claimed Poulin off waivers from the Detroit Tigers. Andre Lara, he allowed 6 runs in 2 innings. He in the top of the 7th gave up a leadoff homer by Shea Langoliers to center field for an 11-3 A's lead. The homer went a projected 419 feet per Statcast and was his 3rd home run of the game. And the Nats late night on Tuesday night announced having optioned Laura to Triple-A Rochester. And Jackson Rutledge was a bright spot. He tossed a perfect top of the 9th with 3 strikeouts. But the Nats now for this regular season are dead last in the majors in relief pitching ERA 5.98 and are dead last in the majors in relief pitching whip 1.57. The Nats offense in this 16-7 loss to the A's on Tuesday evening finished with good numbers. I stress that word, finished. 7 runs, 10 hits, 5 walks, 4 for 9 with runners in scoring position. But the 10 hits were a double and 9 singles. And 4 of the runs, 4 of the hits, and 1 of the walks came in the bottom of the 9th in what was garbage time. The Nats are the kings of scoring runs in garbage time. Some offensive standouts for the Nats. Luis Garcia Jr., he is the Nats starting second baseman and number 3 batter, went 3 for 5 with a 2-run single and 2 other singles. Robert Hassel III, he came off the bench to play left field and had a 2-out RBI double on a 1-2 pitch in that Nats 4-run 9th. Drew Millis, he is the Nats starting catcher and number 8 batter, went 2 for 4 with 2 singles. And Brady House, he is the Nats starting third baseman and number 6 batter, went 1 for 3 with an RBI single, a bases-loaded walk, and an RBI sac fly, though he on the RBI single got thrown out in an attempt to advance to second base. Game 2 for the Nats against the Athletics at Nationals Park, Wednesday evening at 6:45. And yes, Cade Cavalli will be the Nats starting pitcher.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, and maybe even a whole new life. So why not start the journey today? There's over a dozen languages available to learn at your own pace so you can achieve your goals with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm finally learning French after taking classes in high school and thrilled to finish what I'd started years ago. And my favorite part about Babbel is that it's dialogue-based. It helps me to actually practice conversations, and the speech recognition ensures I'm saying words correct them all. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/Blue Wire. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/Blue Wire. Spelled BABBEL.com/Blue Wire. Babbel.com/Blue Wire. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Well, the Orioles, since their 5-game winning streak, have lost 5 of their last 6 games. A 5-0 loss at the National League East leading Philadelphia Phillies on Tuesday evening in Game 2 of a 3-game series. The O's in MLB's 2025 regular season now are 51-63, third worst record in the American League, and their run differential now is -84, second worst run differential in the AL. A feeble offensive performance by the O's on Tuesday evening. The O's scored no runs, totaled just 5 hits, worked no walks, and went 0 for 1 with runners in scoring position. All 5 of the hits were singles. 2 of them were by Jordan Westburg. He is the Orioles starting third baseman and number 2 batter. Went 2 for 3 with 2 singles and a hit by pitch. But the O's got worked by Philly starting pitcher Taijuan Walker, who tossed 6 scoreless innings. I get that the O's, in the lead-up to the 2025 MLB trade deadline, which was this past Thursday, traded multiple key hitters in Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, and Cedric Mullins. But still, the Orioles' offense overall has been a big disappointment this season. This was the Orioles' 12th shutout loss in this regular season. Think about that. 12 of the team's 63 losses have been shutout losses. And really struggling right now is Jackson Holliday. He on Tuesday evening as the Orioles starting second baseman and number 1 batter went 0 for 4. His OPS for this regular season is down to .699. Also, Tyler O'Neill, he is the Orioles starting right fielder and number 5 batter, went 0 for 2 and left the game due to right wrist soreness. This guy just cannot stay healthy. The Orioles starting pitcher in this 5-0 loss at the Phillies on Tuesday evening was Dean Kramer. He allowed 4 runs in 6 innings. He gave up 8 hits, which were a home run, a triple, 2 doubles, and 4 singles. He issued a balk. Now, he did have 6 strikeouts versus 1 walk, and he did throw a good number of strikes, 103 pitches, 68 strikes, 35 balls, and 2 Orioles relievers on Tuesday evening combined to allow 1 run in 2 innings. Grant Wolfram tossed the scoreless bottom of the 7th with 2 strikeouts, and Yaramil Geraldo allowed 1 run in 1 inning. He in the bottom of the 8th gave up a 2-out solo homer by Brandon Marsh to right center field on a 1-2 pitch for a 5-0 Phillies lead. Game 3 for the O's at the Phillies Wednesday afternoon at 12:35. Trevor Rogers will be the Orioles starting pitcher. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Thursday's show, episode 1128, will provide you with more on the Commanders as they on Wednesday have their joint practice at the New England Patriots. Also on Thursday's show, I'll talk Nationals and Orioles. The Nats are home to the Athletics Wednesday evening at 6:45 in Game 2 of a 3-game series. The O's are at the Philadelphia Phillies Wednesday afternoon at 12:35 in Game 3 of a 3-game series. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.
There's a little bit of a tax, I think, that the McLaurin camp wants paid of what Terry's done before Jaden arrived.